This is Diplomatic Ties on the largest television network on the continent of Africa, the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA. On this edition, we shall be focusing on the key takeaways from G20 Summit in New Delhi. Going down memory lane, the Group of 20, also known as G20, is the premier forum for international economic cooperation. G20 plays an important role in shaping and strengthening global architecture and governance on all major international economic issues. Available record shows that the G20 was founded in 1999 after the Asian financial crisis as a forum for finance ministers and central bank governors to discuss global economic and financial issues. 9 years after, G20 was upgraded to the level of heads of state and government in the wake of the global economic and financial crisis of 2007. And in 2009, it was designated the premier forum for international economic cooperation. The G20 initially focused largely on broad macroeconomic issues, but it has since expanded its agenda to inter alia include trade, sustainable development, health, agriculture, energy, environment, climate change, and anti-corruption. G20 has no permanent secretariat or headquarters, but rotates its summit or meetings among member states. The G20 has also expanded its horizon with the acceptance of the African Union as a bloc to its fold. Now, to shed light on the major takeaways from the 2023 G20 summits is the Indian High Commissioner to Nigeria, G. Bala Subramanian. Your Excellency, you're welcome to Diplomatic Ties.
Thank you, Nancy, and namaste from India, and we are very happy to be here as part of this program on NTA.
And I'm Nancy Godia Munihu. Welcome. Okay, Your Excellency, one of the prominent features of the G20 summits in New Delhi is the acceptance of the African Union into the G20. What, in your opinion, is the import of this to the Group of 20?
This is a historical step that has happened. When we took over the presidency in December 2022, my Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, had made it his priority to focus and bring the focus on the global south. African Union inclusion into the group of G20 is something which has been much needed, and an enhanced participation from the African continent is very, very important to bring the perspectives and also the need of the global south into focus for the G20 deliberations. So it's a historical step, and on the recommendation and on the proposal that has been made by Government of India, my Prime Minister, this G20 2023 summit had unanimously agreed to make African Union as a permanent member of G20 international organizations.
With your Prime Minister spearheading the course, actually. Now, African Union with 55 member countries, has a collective GDP of about $3 trillion. With some 1.4 billion people, how would this add up for the Group of 20 countries?
So, as you know, G20 is a forum which takes important decisions on the economic activities of the whole world, the global policy making on economy. To have a large section of the population of the world of 7 billion, 1.4 billion are there in the African continent, and to have them not represented, to have their views, their perspectives, their needs and their requirements not brought onto the table for the group to discuss and take on decisions which will affect the whole of the world is something which was missing, and so India made it a point to do that, and African Union now getting into the G20 would certainly help the collective group to come about with equitable and proper decision-making process with perspectives from the Global South also.
Now, why is Africa so important? Anyway, let's say with the African continent, are there possible gains for the African continent?
If you look at the New Delhi leaders' declaration that has come out, the NDLD that has come out, you can see that there have been far-reaching changes that have been brought in. There have been decisions which will affect the economy, the climate part of it. There were various 10 themes under which the whole thing had worked on. So whether it is the digital public infrastructure, whether it is the climate change part of it, or whether it is the financing for the climate change activities that will have to be done, whether it is the agricultural decisions taken for the improvement of agriculture, on food security, these are issues which will certainly help, and being on the table would certainly facilitate African Union to utilize all these decisions in their favor also, and which would bring in a huge perspective for the whole of the world, because a large chunk of our population need to be benefited from these issues, and presence of African Union would help it, and would also help African Union in utilizing these decisions to their favor.
Africa will actually have to bring in their own touch to the group. And again, India as a nation actually seized the opportunity of this summit to foster diplomatic ties on all fronts. What are the benefits derivable from the summit by your home country?
I would rather put it in this manner, that when India took over the presidency, the focus was on Global South.
Okay.
And it is not something that India would like to benefit. It is something that India would like to bring onto the platform of G20 with all the friends from the Global South. The importance of identifying the requirements, the needs, and the views of a large section of the society, a large section of the world. So, if you look at the declaration, the outcomes that have come in have certainly brought in a keen focus on these things, and an acceptance of the fact that the Global South has a major role to play, and there's a large section of the population that is there. So these, by bringing in these declarations, by bringing in the consensus amongst the whole of the G20 countries, and also arriving at various decisions affecting the whole of humanity, I think Government of India, New Delhi, and our Prime Minister has been able to achieve a lot in bringing consensus and bringing to the fold the importance of having negotiations and having discussions to the benefit of the humanity. Certainly, India's position as such, which is the 5th largest world economy today, and with a large population, certainly we do have a major role to play, but I would rather say that this is for the whole of the Global South rather than exclusively for India.
You mean economically it didn't add anything to India?
Well, the G20 in India was actually a major way in which we had, it is an unprecedented way in which we had done it. It was done in 60 different cities in the country, with Jan Bhagidari, as we call it, which is called as the people's participation. See, if you look at any economic issue that will have bearing on the life of an individual, when it is taken at a different level, people do not understand it very well. But during our presidency, it is an unprecedented way in which every other part of the country got involved. It was a whole Government of India approach, and therefore people understood the importance of these decision-making processes, and they participated wholeheartedly, whether it is the universities, whether it is the panchayats, or whether it is the local administration, and every state government got involved in it, and therefore economically also it was useful, and policy-wise bringing these economic decision-making processes down to the grassroots was something which was very important, and it brought into focus the importance of diplomacy to our own country people also.
Now, one of the key issues that resonated during the G20 summit was the condemnation of use of force for territorial gain. How will this engender global peace?
I'm very happy to note that the New Delhi Leaders Declaration was a consensus document which was agreed to by all the countries participating and the international organizations there. It very unequivocally brought out the requirement of fulfilling the purposes and the principles of United Nations, and that everybody should refrain from violating the the territorial integrity and sovereignty of another country. Use of nuclear weapons was completely unacceptable. These are the things which have been brought out in the declaration. So when there is consensus amongst all the people, those people who are actually participating in those things, in spite of the divergent opinions that used to be there, this particular consensus document, I'm sure, is a beacon of hope for diplomacy and for dialogue. And my Prime Minister has been time and again stating that this is not an era of war. And this has been amply reflected with consensus of the participating countries, and I'm sure this would certainly help in towards this particular purpose.
And you look at some countries that couldn't make it to that summit.
But they were represented by different level of people, in the sense that from China we had the Premier who was participating, from Spain there was a Deputy Prime Minister who came in, from Russia the Minister of Foreign Affairs had represented. So in spite of everything, the whole summit was fully attended by all the countries at different levels. We had 42 members sitting across the table, and it was one of the largest one.
Okay, now issues bordering on climate change caught the attention of the world leaders as well. Is it really attainable, achieving the net zero emission?
Absolutely. I think the declaration, the negotiations that led up to this declaration has been very useful. They have been very useful, and they have brought in, so one major issue of climate change thing is that financing has always been a problem. Technology transfer had always been a problem. In this declaration, during the negotiations, it has been very clearly agreed for a new collective quantitative goal and the financing for that, and all the countries, the G20 members, have agreed that in 2024 they would be working out a financing option which is trackable, which is transparent, and which is universal. So that is one achievement. They have also agreed that up to $5.9 trillion will be given pre-2030 to the developing countries to mitigate the solution, and subsequently $4 trillion would be utilized for the developing countries to achieve the net zero emission by 2030. So while the whole of the world wants the climate change action to be taken, the constraints were financing, which has been actually addressed during this conference, during this G20 summit. And I am very confident that with this declaration and with the commitment made by the G20 countries, it would be possible for us to achieve the net zero emission by 2030. In addition to that, there is also a green development initiative. There is a green hydrogen innovative center that has been created along with the International Solar Alliance. The G20 countries have agreed to triple the renewable energy production in the next by 2030. I can give you an example. India has an installed capacity of about 461 gigawatts. Out of that, nearly 40%, 175 gigawatt, are from renewable energy.
So already India had started the process.
Exactly. So by tripling these things in the by 2030, and also these initiatives like the Global Biofuel Alliance, which has been created by India along with various other countries during this G20 summit, these will certainly go go a long way in helping the world address the issue of climate change. There was also this high-level principles of Chennai high-level principles on blue economy, disaster reduction, resilient infrastructure. So these are various aspects of technological and financial issues which would certainly help in achieving the net zero emissions.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Now let's look at agriculture, which is one of the key programs on the G20. How would the membership of the group assist in ensuring food security in the whole of Africa? Because Africa has that shortage of.
I agree with you, and I would only point out to the Deccan high-level principles on global food security and nutrition, which is a document that has been agreed during the deliberations, which would certainly help in humanitarian issues on food security, nutrition aspects, the supply of material, and so on and so forth. So the G20 also agreed on the millet initiative, which was initially proposed by India and accepted by all the countries, and 2023 has been declared as the International Year of Millets by the United Nations also. There is an Indian Institute of Millet Research based in Hyderabad, which is also part of this G20 deliberations, and so we have offered, the G20 had agreed, and everybody is now focusing on providing the food security, global value chain issues, where we can increase the agricultural production through facilities of technological transfer, so on and so forth. This Deccan high-level principle declaration is something which is very useful, and Government of India is also keen in cooperating with African Union. Bilaterally also, we have been working with Nigerian Millet Initiative. We had along with FAO, we had various seminars over here. We had the Indian Millet Initiative conference attended by a large number of Nigerian agriculturists and technocrats. So this is something which we are working on, and we are hopeful that we would be in a position to address the issue of food security globally and certainly in Africa too.
Thank you. Your country has a special relationship with Nigeria. We're going to talk about that when we come back. This is Diplomatic Ties on the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA. We are looking at the key takeaways from the 2023 G20 summit held in New Delhi with the Indian High Commissioner to Nigeria, G. Balasubramanian, right here in the studio explaining things. We shall continue with the program in just a moment. Don't go away. Oh yes, Your Excellency, your country's Prime Minister Narendra Modi personally invited Nigeria's President Tinubu to the G20 summit. Why, in your thoughts, did he extend this gesture to our president? And how strategic is this move to the India-Nigeria tie?
It's a very good question. As you are aware, India started its diplomatic ties with its own program, but we had started diplomatic ties and relations with Nigeria 2 years before your independence by establishing a diplomatic office in Lagos in 1958.
Oh, before our independence.
Our leadership, Indian leadership, had recognized the potential, had recognized the importance, the giant of Africa, which is Nigeria, with its large population, which has got similar issues, similar multicultural, multilinguistic, religious structure that we have. You are one of the largest, you are the largest population in Africa. We are the largest population in our own area, and both of us value democracy, and we have been working towards that. So, given the importance that India attaches to Nigeria, even before your independence, as I told you, we continue to have our full faith on Nigeria, and therefore, as soon as we took over the presidency, every presidency can invite a few countries, and India chose to invite Nigeria to be part of it. This is the first time Nigeria has been invited to G20, and this is also a focus on the global south that we had been having on. And in the month of January, our Prime Minister had also organized a virtual Voice of the Global South Summit, in which President Buhari had also taken part. So it is very important for us to have the views and the values that Nigeria brings onto the table. And I'm happy to say that in the more than 200 meetings that we have organized throughout G20, Indian presidency of G20, we have found Nigeria to be an able and a very good friend and partner.
So much faith India actually has in Nigeria, having to establish relations with Nigeria even before independence. That shows a lot. And now, in what crucial or specific areas of interest are we looking at when Nigeria, as Nigeria and India move on together?
During the visit, His Excellency President Tinubu had, and my Prime Minister had a bilateral meeting also. They decided that they will have to strengthen the cooperation further, particularly in the fields of agriculture, in the infrastructure, defense, millets, fintech, so on and so forth. His Excellency Tinubu's, President Tinubu's delegation was also involved 5 more ministers, and they all had their bilateral interaction with their respective counterparts in India. So it is a very focused meeting that took place, not only at the political level, but also President Tinubu had organized NIBC, which is the Nigeria-India Business Council, and also a round table with the businessmen. And as you would have seen in the newspapers, there were large quantities of investments that have been promised during this visit by the Indian businessmen into various sectors of telecommunication, steel, petroleum, renewable energy, so on and so forth. So I think these are the areas on which we would be working, and this visit of His Excellency President Tinubu to India to attend the G20 summit has been a crucial one, an important one, and we would certainly work on the outcomes that have come out of the visit.
Okay, that roundtable actually also, remember, the G20 summit was an opportunity for India to showcase its great technological advancement. Is there any hope of Nigeria tapping into that?
So we are working on various issues, I would say, on the fintech part of it, whether it is the universal universal payment interface that we are working on with Nigeria on the fintech, whether it is the digital public infrastructure, which is an open source free medium which has been agreed to by the G20 leadership also, countries also. In that it would be useful, which is interoperable, which is open, and it is very easy to access for the citizen services. So these are the new areas in which we would certainly be cooperating, and particularly India and Nigeria, we are already working on various of these issues. Agriculture, the millet initiative, as I initially mentioned, that is another part. Whether it is the CNG or e-vehicles that can come in as passenger vehicles, CNG kit, and also fertilizers, so on and so forth, we are working on.
And about the TransAfrican Corridor, what role is the corridor going to play in enhancing global economic growth?
The movement of goods, the earlier the goods are in a position to reach their destinations, and the people who are wanting to utilize that, would certainly increase the economic activity not only along the corridor but also within the corridor and amongst the people over there. There are transit routes which are available, and people, it need not necessarily start from point A to point B. There are various points in between also. So that would in any case help the global economy flourish and support, and this would certainly help the people, not only countries and people along the road also.
Okay, Your Excellency, before I let you go, I'd like to ask you, because I know that before the departure of the people that attended that, the presidents that attended the forum, President Tinubu and other world leaders were taken to the tomb of the man who led the campaign for India's independence, Mahatma Gandhi, to lay wreath. Of what significance is this to India and the world as a whole?
Mahatma Gandhi is the father of the nation, and Rajghat is the place where all the leaders were taken to pay homage to Mahatma Gandhi. That is called as Rajghat. Rajghat is the place where he is buried, and so it is of significance for not only to the nation but also to the whole world, to pay homage to the apostle of peace, a person who had used non-violence as a means for seeking freedom instead of any armed struggle or anything of that sort, and successfully achieved that also. India's this year's 2023 summit, the theme of its summit was One Earth, One Family, One Future. Okay. And he embodies, Mahatma Gandhi embodies the universalization of humanity as his main principle, non-violence as his main principle. So it is but natural to have all the global leaders pay homage to that, and it is also part of our protocol.
I think it's very, very in tandem with the topic, I mean, with the agenda, you know, for which they gathered. Now, Your Excellency, what are you looking at when you see Nigeria and India push on in their relationship? How is it likely to be in future? Where do you want to take Nigeria-India relations to as an ambassador of your country to Nigeria?
I'm very confident that the relationship will further strengthen, and the political leadership on both sides are invested in this relationship. People-to-people contact is excellent. Our trade relations are wonderful and growing, and nearly, as the presidency had also issued a press release, nearly $14 billion additional investments have already been promised during this visit. So the trade and economic cooperation, people-to-people contact, political interactions, whether it is the institutional mechanisms that are already in place and also bilateral visits and other things, I'm very confident of a solid and growing, for mutual benefit, growing bilateral relations between India and Nigeria.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for coming on Diplomatic Ties.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me over.
It's been Diplomatic Ties featuring Indian High Commissioner to Nigeria, G. Bala Subramanian, who had taken us through most of the key takeaways from the G20 summit held in India, with the African Union joining the bloc as we look forward to broader economic relations and growth both continentally and globally, including a brighter diplomatic relations between Nigeria and India. On behalf of our crew on the program, this is Nancy Godianguni, thanking you for watching.